Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we've got a 10-game slate here on Wednesday to choose from in the NBA. In this one, taking a look at a couple Eastern Conference foes. The Pacers are in Boston, taking on those struggling C's as of late. Take a look at that one. Also got another game video for you and our player props. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where we have our great written content for you guys all season long. And you can use our odds finder tool there to make sure you're shopping those U.S. sports books, getting the best lines available and all the juice back you can in the NBA this season. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into this 10-game slate and then talk C's and Pacers.
Yeah, it should be a good one here tonight. I mean, leading off with the Bucks +2 at Cavs, definitely a great game to monitor. I kind of lean Cavs at home, but it's tough to pick that one. We got Detroit +11 at the Sixers, who are back on track for sure. They're on a back-to-back, though. The Warriors on a back-to-back +12 at Brooklyn after getting thumped by the Knicks last night. Bulls on a back-to-back +6 at the Hawks. Still think they covered there. The Hawks are strugs. The other game we break down, the Raptors are only +2 at the Knicks, who are on a back-to-back, but they cruised last night. This game we'll get to in a minute. Pacers are +10 in Boston, and the total's been bet up to 233. Blazers in a rematch with OKC. They're -4 on the road. Magic in a pick'em at Houston. Mavs in a rematch with Minnesota. They're -3 after getting crushed in the previous one. The Kings -6 at home against the Lakers, who are without AD again. Totals all the way at 240 there. And the Hornets +8 at the Clippers, who have plenty of rest. So we should see Kawhi and Paul George on the floor there tonight. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Celtics struggling. I mean, pretty shocking. We would expect them to have struggled on their West Coast road trip, but it was obviously shocking that they lost both games against Orlando back home. An Orlando team that's a really weird matchup for anyone, and I guess reintegrating Rob Williams, even though he only played 18 minutes each game, maybe threw a little bit of a wrench into things. Derek White, as you mentioned, not shooting the ball pretty well anymore. I mean, there's a lot of regression to come in general for the C's when everybody's shooting 41% from three. Like, no matter what, Grant Williams can't miss a shot. Everything they get is going in, and it was just a string of overs. Well, now they've gone under in 7 of their last 8. And again, some of that is the home road splits. You could definitely expect them to come home and light it up. I mean, their team total is all the way at 122 right now with -120 on the over. I can't get myself to bet that either way because, I mean, I think they either put the smackdown on the Pacers here or they have to grind out another win. And the Pacers have been feisty, especially when they play the Celtics. I mean, they beat them twice, even after the Celtics got hot. Towards the second half of last season, Malcolm Brogdon had a big thing to do with that first one. And then they didn't win the second one. The Celtics won, but that was a shootout because Rob Williams sat and Daniel Tice was in there instead of him. So Rob, even in a playing half the game type of role on a minutes limit, he's going to make a huge impact on this team. And don't forget Papa Al's back after missing some of that road trip. And he can just sub in and take those non-Rob Williams minutes. And I mean, obviously their defensive rating much better with Rob. Since the start of January, he keyed that huge defensive surge. Their offense is also just not as good because they can't play that same kind of 5-out style where everybody can shoot. They're scoring 7 points per game fewer without him. With him in the lineup, they're hitting 2 fewer 3-pointers per game at a 35% rate versus 38%. And the pace is 2 possessions slower per game. So, I mean, the total's climbing here because Indy has that reputation for sure of getting up and down. But, I mean, the last time these teams played with Rob Williams, in January with him fully healthy, he had an 83 individual defensive rating. The team had a 93 defensive rating, and it was a 101-98 game. That's what we've historically seen from the Pacers and the Celtics. In the Pacers in this spot, 7-5 to the under when they're road dogs, 3-2 to the unders when they have a rest disadvantage, a little bit of a disadvantage here. Both teams are pretty well rested, but And their only overs recently have been against like Brooklyn with everyone sitting, against the Warriors who, can't play a lick of defense. Against teams like even like the Wolves and the Blazers, like they've still gone under here. I think this total's a little too high. I think the Celtics, when they're in get right mode and they have this much good defensive personnel on the floor, I think they have an ability to just shut down the Pacers offense. As good as Halliburton is, he was not a master facilitator the last couple times he faced the Celtics team, and he'll get the Marcus Smart treatment. Now Brogdon's on the other side, another body to throw at him. So I think the Celtics are definitely going to win this game, and I think they might keep it under. So I'd be looking at a potential tease, though. I mean, 10 points is too much for me to trust right now, but it's definitely possible that they win a blowout game here.
Yeah, it's possible, but I actually am eyeing the total as my favorite bet in this one, just because, if anything, I could see the Pacers covering. As you said, they've been pretty good as away dogs anyway. And not necessarily against the total there. They're actually 6-9 to the over there on the road. We know their games average about 227 when they're on the road. They're scoring about 114 or so, or excuse me, 112, giving up about 114 and a half, whatever. They make fewer threes. They shoot worse on the road. Like, they're just a worse offense on the road, which is why they're struggling to go over. And they've been a little bit better on defense from the start of the season, when they were just a bunch of turnstiles, and they also spent a few games playing without Miles Turner as well, as we know. But in their last five, I'll say a little bit better on defense. They've upped their opponent 3-point percent. They lowered their opponent 3-point percentage down from what it was, about 37%, down to about 35, which is good for 15th in the league. Was in the bottom 8 or so. They are giving up a bunch of free throw attempts, but they're getting back on defense. They're not allowing you to score in the fast break as well. So it's sort of their half court offense, obviously, that you wish was a little bit, or excuse me, defense that was a little bit better. But the fact that they're guarding the three so much better, in part because of the fact that Miles Turner's come back, you can sell out on the 3-point line a bit more when you have at least one shot blocker down there, versus having pretty much nobody to guard the paint down low before Miles came back. So you're looking at like Jalen Smith doing that. So I think their defense is better for a reason. And then Boston, it's a little bit of the turnaround that we thought we were going to see. Like you said, there was no way they were going to shoot 40.7% from three as a team, as they did for the first 25 games of the season. That's just not sustainable all season. But the regression probably went a bit too far the other way on offense. And now I think we'll come back to the mean. We all expected them to go down in offense and up in defense with the arrival of Rob Will, with the return of Al Horford, who missed a few games as well and is now playing the last 3 or so. But the turnaround is stark. As you know, in the last 6, really the last 8 games, and in part because that was the last time they played the Dubs, who seemed to have them figured out a little bit. There was some thought maybe on that West Coast road trip that the Dubs put the clamps on them in a way that might have given a little bit of a direction for other teams to be able to follow their game plan. But it's really just when that team seemed to have taken a little bit of their confidence, and since that time, their offense has gone down to the worst offensive rating in the league, which is also not something you expect to continue. It's a direct result of the guys behind Jalen and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Behind those guys, it's everything they're not doing on offense. In those last 8 games, Malcolm Brogdon's their third leading scorer with 13 a game. Please give him more time and stop playing Derek White as much, because he scored 6 points a game in that time frame, shooting 27% from the field and 20% from deep. Marcus Smart also coming back to earth from his 40% from 3 down to 32% in the last 8, 38% from the field. Actually shooting worse from the field in a couple of these games than he is from deep, including that last game that they lost to Orlando, where he was 32% from the field, yet shooting 42% from 3. So they just can't. The offense isn't really, once you collapse on them outside in the 3-point line, that's been where guys outside of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown seem to be struggling to get their offense, and that's why this team has just slowed down a lot. You look at Al Horford and Robert Williams coming back. Obviously, that's going to be a huge factor for both bettering your defense, worsening your offense. Since last season, with and without Papa Al, 106.5 defensive rating with him, 114 defensive rating without him. Rob Will, you mentioned, their defensive rating goes up 4 points per 100 when he's in the game. Their offense also goes down about 2 points per 100 period when he's in the game since last season. So it's just a slower pace of offense. It's not going to be quite the same pace and space. They're going to be attacking the rim a lot more, getting more free throws, but definitely lessening the amount of 3-pointers that they're shooting and making. And I just like that Indy is, like I said, playing a little bit better on defense, enough that I think that they can at least limit, even if this is a game where you say, okay, worst case scenario for everything we're saying is the Celtics just come out and blow the absolute doors off of Indy. They're still going to be playing better defense than they were. So even if this is a blowout and they do score their 122, 125, I think that you can depend on a few less points there from Indy if that is the case. But I think it will be a little bit closer. That's why I'm not willing to take that 10 points. A little bit more of a grind, but I'm happy to keep it under 233, especially since it's risen from its opening total of about 230.5.
Yeah, the free throws is the only thing that really concerns me, is that Indy gives up a high amount of free throws, and Boston doesn't do a great job limiting them at home. But maybe that's because Rob Williams hasn't been in there to just change every shot at the rim. But I do kind of lean on Indy's ability to guard the 3-point line. Rick Carlisle being a great defensive coach, and they faced the Celtics 4 times since they've been this juggernaut at the start of 2022 and held them to 12 threes per game at 35% clip. Granted, that hasn't led to, it's only led to 1 under, but it has led to under this total twice. And one of those times in Boston when the Celtics struggled to get it going there from deep as well. And the pace that the Pacers have changed, they were playing at like a 105 pace in 5 games, and then in these last 9, it's dropped to 98. And with those spikes, though, explaining 2 of the overs, Brooklyn and Golden State, they had a huge spike. Strangely, they had a 90 pace against the Cavs, still got to 230, which is an over. But I think that has a lot to do with struggling to stop a parade to the free throw line from both teams. So that is the concern here if you're going to take the under. But I would expect it to keep climbing a little bit. I think you can preach some patience here if you are going to take the under, and that you might be able to get it at like 235, 236. And just the Celtics' reputation as being able to just light it up the way they were at the beginning of the season might not be the case as much here, now that they have more of their full team back.
Yeah, and are also guarding the 3-point line way better, which is what matters with these two teams when they play. They're both shooting, in the top 5 in terms of the highest percentage of their field goal attempts from 3 and scoring most of their points from there. I mean, Boston's gotten a little bit better, a little bit more versatile since they've gotten bigger with those guys coming back. But the fact that they can defend the 3-point line to the degree that they can is really what I most count on. The fact that they're limiting opponents' fast break points as well is what I'm really worried about. If Tyrese Halliburton can't get the ball and go and get open threes in transition for his team, get offensive rebounds and get threes in sort of the helter-skelter mode, then they're not going to be able to really hang on offense with this team. That's the only way that I think they can really get points in their matchups versus Boston tonight. So, I mean,
Knicks are on a back-to-back, yes, but they also coasted to a win over the Warriors last night. With their main 3 guys, Jalen, RJ, and Julius, playing 30 minutes or a little bit less. So, and even in back-to-back situations where they were in a little bit of a closer game, I mean, none of them have been particularly close recently. They got smoked by the Mavs, came back and held the Cavs to 81 points to really start this 8-game win streak. That was on a back-to-back. They destroyed the Pistons and then almost beat the Bucks, wound up losing by 6 on some late free throws. That was a push against the spread, but I mean, I consider that a win, moral victory, if you will. The Suns pulled away at home, and then on a back-to-back, Knicks bounced back with a win over OKC, and then out west they beat Utah and Denver Nuggets without Jokic and a road back-to-back. So they're now 4-1 straight up when they have a rest disadvantage this year. They're 10-3 straight up when they're favored. They would be favored by much more if this wasn't a back-to-back situation, because Toronto is flailing. I mean, they're like 3-9 straight up when they're underdogs, 1-8 straight up as road dogs, 3-12 straight up on the road regardless. Their only quality win on the road came against Miami in about the 4th game of the season. Other than that, the other 2 wins are against the Spurs and Pistons, teams that are literally not trying to win. Their defense was broken without OG Anunoby the last few games. That's why they've lost 9 of their last 11, the 2 wins coming at home. And then their offense looked broken in their last game against the Sixers. They got to 101 in double overtime, and Pascal Siakam was just the only source of offense. No Gary Trent. He might not be back here either to try and spread the floor, but the Knicks have been elite guarding the three-point line. They've been elite guarding the paint during this 8-game span. And the key stats with the Raptors, as always, not giving up many points off turnovers and not giving up many fast break points at all at home on the season. They're giving up the 5th fewest fast break points. So they can defend the Raptors. They've also been able to defend Siakam, who has been the source of offense in his last 4 versus the Knicks. 19 points per game on 33% field goal shooting. And that's a 92 offensive rating. Fred VanVleet has been the one that's been cooking the Knicks, but he's struggling lately. Doesn't seem to be completely healthy, coming off a 3 for 15 outing. And the Knicks have been shutting down point guards lately, allowing the 7th fewest points and assists to that position. OG Anunoby also, only 1 game back after a decent absence here. And it's just mostly that the Raptors, they've just really been bad on the road. They're 0-5 straight up, 1-4 against the spread. Their last 5 road games with a -9 net rating. And free throws are the only source of offense for them. But they have the highest percentage of points off free throws when they're on the road. And the Knicks are allowing the 2nd lowest percentage of points off free throws right now. They're just denying everything. And they seem to have no let up on back-to-backs right now. So they feel very confident about this one. I think best pick on the slate. I think the Knicks are going to do just fine here at home.
Yeah, the Knicks have been doing just fine over the course of their last 8. You want to know if they're playing against good teams. They are. They're beating good teams. They're playing still at their slow New York pace, but they're actually getting a few more points in transition, a few more fast break points, mostly off of turnovers. Not really just out streaking. They're not going to get the ball out of a made basket and go. But they are getting those points off of the turnovers because they've ramped the defense back up, as we've been talking about, as we also call them laying the absolute wood on that Warriors team, like you said they did to me last night. The way that they're doing it is through starting on defense. That's why they have their points off turnovers. They're crashing the boards. That's why they're getting their points off second chance points. The Raptors, as we have been talking about for a while, still need a center. The teams can get those second chance points off of them as much as they would like. They're not really limiting fast break points, despite the fact that they're scoring them so much. They're actually dead last now in terms of limiting their opponent fast break points. Their opponent getting points off of turnovers. They are limiting, even in their last 8 where they're 1-7. So it's kind of like fine, but the Knicks have found more ways to score on teams, and that's why you've seen in their last few games that, especially at home, they've at least been able to bring it on offense, just with a 132 that they put on the Dubs at home, the 112 they put on the Kings, 113 on the Hawks. So that 114, 110 to 115-ish range for them is plenty fine now that they have a 90.5 defensive rating over the course of their last 8 games, that they've won all of them, as we said. So I love the home stuff for them. I also, looking at last night in the back-to-back stuff you talk about, Jalen Brunson played 29 minutes, RJ played 31, and Julius played 28. So fine. They're still fine to play tonight. They obviously didn't have to travel as well. They are 10-7 straight up after they've won this season, and they're covering those spreads by about 3.5 points as well. So there's nothing really to be concerned with there. And it's really going to come down to it. Toronto not being able to score in the ways that they need to be able to score. You need to be able to make threes against this Knicks team at home, where they're also shooting, pretty decent from 3. At least they're making roughly 12 a game, and the 34 attempts is also super low. So it's you need to be able to match what they're doing outside of the 3-point line if you're not gonna be making threes. And the Knicks are just better at what each team is trying to do, whether it's limiting teams in their fast break, scoring from down low, and limiting and getting second chance points. And the Knicks are doing all those things super well, which will be limiting to what Toronto can do without the 3-point line. You mentioned Fred VanVleet, a huge reason for that. He's shooting roughly 2 for 8 this year from behind the arc, 2.5 threes a game on 8 attempts. That's pretty much emblematic of what their team is able to do this season from behind the arc, which is why they're struggling so much on offense. And everything that you see from them in terms of losses is usually around them having like 110 points or less. So I'm not really going to attack this total. I know I keep talking about points. I'm just using it as sort of more game theory, where I'm saying if this total is at 217.5, I think the Raptors need to win a game where they score 115 points to really be able to hang with anybody right now. The Knicks are happy to play at like a 109 to 100 type of pace and have this thing just be in their control all game. And that would be what I would assume is going to be happening in this one with Toronto unable to spread the floor the way they are.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely lean under. You looked at the Knicks, they were 1-5 to the under in their last 6 home games before going over, just because they were able to just destroy the Warriors, who can't play any defense on the road. Toronto can play defense right now. I mean, as soon as they get OG Anunoby back, they pretty much held the Sixers in check, and that game got to 205 in double overtime again. So I think both these teams will be able to muck it up a bit. And so it's interesting to see the total rise from 216 to 218. I think it's kind of exploitable there to go Knicks parlay with the under as well, because, yeah, a lot of the things that these teams do allow, like Toronto struggles in terms of assist to field goal ratio, and the Knicks are getting like no assists in any way, shape, or form. So there's not necessarily going to be a lot of good half-court offense here. I still don't consider the Knicks like world beaters on both ends of the floor. They're giving a full effort on defense, and it's been really good to see night in, night out from them. That's why we're still good about it with the back-to-back. But, I mean, the Raptors have the worst half-court offense in the league, and if they're not getting free throws and they're not getting fast break points, I don't see a lot of points scored here at the Garden.
Yep, 100% with all of that. I mean, you start to get a little bit nervous. You're like, the Knicks have to lose at some point. And you know, the Raptors are a team that is just, it's not the moment for them right now. They're not doing things well. And we keep hearing conversations about, you know, the whispers are the Raptors really just going to blow things up at some point with the way that this roster is constructed. They've been trying to put the pieces together. Injuries have definitely been hurting them this season. There's been a little bit, we've talked about a little bit of the lack of chemistry as well. Just seems like it's a team that's on the downslope in a way that you can take advantage of them while they're coming up against a team that's so heavy on the upslope for the Knicks and at such a small total, which it actually seems to have gone towards the Raps a little bit here and there. It's fluctuating a smidge, but you know, started about -2. It's about minus 1.5 for the Knicks, depending on where you find it. So stay tuned for all that stuff. You definitely want to be watching these lines as they move up and down a little bit today for the Knicks or the Raptors, but I'm definitely liking the Knicks at such a low spread here. So Nate, let's go ahead and jump into your first NBA play-up prop for tonight.
Yeah, just FYI, we will be off on for Friday's slate. TBD on the 2-game slate tomorrow, but we're going to have a full episode about the Christmas games this Sunday in exchange. So stay tuned for that. We'll have both games and prop videos up for Christmas. Looking at Wednesday here, though, LeBron James, the only one with props up in this Lakers-Kings game, and that's all we need, really. Russ Westbrook is a game-time decision, so that's maybe why no other Lakers are getting any props, but we know AD's out for a long time, and LeBron's going to step up without AD. You've seen it since the start of last season. His usage rate's up at 33% without AD, scoring about 32 points per game, 31 points per game. On the road this year, his usage rate goes up from 30 to 33%. In his last 3 against Sacramento, he's scoring 32 points per game on a 35% usage rate. Sacramento might be without Harrison Barnes or Domantas Sabonis tonight. I mean, Sabonis not really a great defender, but it does make them a little thinner, and Barnes is probably the matchup they'd start on LeBron. They have the fourth worst defensive efficiency at home. They allow the most assists per game to small forwards in the last 2 weeks. And they allow the 4th most paint points overall, and LeBron's just attacking the paint. It's opened up with no AD there, so he can more easily just go in there and not try to mess around with threes. The points are at 30.5. The assists are at 7.5. I would prefer combining them because I think he's going to be diming up a lot more. Yeah, you're definitely getting value if Russ Westbrook is out, because then LeBron's assist rate is going to be up at 40-50%. For sure, he's not going to be sharing the floor with Russ. He's going to be controlling the action like he's wont to do. And it's just a great matchup. It's a game with a 240-point total. And LeBron is going to do everything he can to carry the Lakers in their fast-paced attack, and he should be putting up stats all over.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird time in Lakerland for sure. Putting up stats all over. I mean, I definitely like the points for sure as well, just because, like you keep talking about here, everything he does when Russ or when AD is out, especially, and how he gets to that 32, 33 number pretty consistently without him, and at least 30 really since AD came to the squad and has been injured consistently. So has LeBron. So there's not as many numbers as you might think where he's playing without AD, to be honest. But now is definitely another time to get take advantage of that sample size of him playing without AD and putting up those big numbers. I think it's another opportunity tonight for sure. In a game that will have a ton of points, by the way. What's it, 239.5 right now? So there's going to be points as the Lakers are playing at that blistering fast pace at home, especially. Let's go to a guy we've been hitting on pretty consistently, I would say, this season. Donnie Mitchell having one of his better seasons and sort of a resurgence, really. 26.5 points tonight. Be very clear, the odds finder tool coming through for us. Minus 110 on MGM for him to get the 27 points, Nate. Minus 120 everywhere else that you might find him on sportsbooks with a prop at that number 26.5. So definitely getting way better juice on MGM. Thank you, odds finder tool. His last 6 versus Milwaukee, which is this is a big game, and we know Donnie shows up on offense in big games, especially this season. Last 6 versus Milwaukee, about 28 points per game and 5 assists or so. Shooting 41% from the field, 34 from deep, always good, 89% from the line. And then, getting about more than 6 free throw attempts a game, which is crucial for him. You love that if he's going to get those points. And his 2 roadies with Cleveland against them, 26 points a game. That 35% usage rate is what you love to see, with 4 threes made on a 40% clip as well. But here at home in his last 5, 34% usage as well. So really similar numbers in the usage that he's been getting on the road, but bringing that home now. Close, he came close at home versus Dallas in one of those last 5, 25 points in 42 minutes. Dallas, obviously a really good defensive team. So is Milwaukee, but Dallas might be a little bit better in terms of guarding the wing there. We'll see what Drew's able to do against him. But a couple of these teams that, these games that he's had recently give you that good feeling of that 34% usage rate with him. If he's going to be getting, 20, 22 shots in this game with the roughly 6 free throw attempts that you expect him to make almost all of them, if not all of them, then the 26.5 points feels really good in a game that should have a decent amount of points with Cleveland playing so well on offense at home.
Yeah, I mean, the reason you'd be scared of this is Drew Holiday, but he hasn't really shut down Donnie. 116 defensive rating the last time he faced him. They faced off in the middle of the 2021 season, and Donnie went for 32 points in 32 minutes. He's just like scoring a point per minute with the Cavs. I mean, the Bucks team defense is so good that it's kind of a situation where the Cavs do that. Okay, Mitchell, bail us out. And he's done that routinely since he got there this year, including some decent numbers on the road against this Bucks team. But now they're home, the Cavs, where the Bucks are much more vulnerable when they're on the road. So Mo Wagner should get at least one more night of decent run here. Wendell Carter Jr. is due back on Friday, but until then, it's the Mo Bros, Mo Bamba, and Wagner. And in his last 4, I mean, Mo's been a key member of Orlando's success here. 17 points per game, 7.5 rebounds on 60% field goal shooting with a 143 offensive rating. 3 of those came on the road, and 2 against the Boston Celtics. So now he faces Houston, which is not a good defensive team at all, and actually allows the most points per game to power forwards on the season, allowing the 4th most rebounds in their last 2 weeks of play. So 14.5 points is close to even money, or 21.5 points in rebounds, since he is boarding up. And Houston tends to throw up a lot of field goal attempts and doesn't necessarily make a ton. So I mean, not too much to say other than these props are low, and Wagner is going to be getting his full slate of run in a system that's working for the bigs here in Orlando. If there's more defensive attention on Paolo and his brother Franz, Mo Wagner is more than happy to make defenses pay.
I love Mo Wagner. I haven't had a chance to talk about my fantasy team in a while. Have definitely picked him up. Probably time to drop him, as you mentioned. Once WCJ, Wendell Carter Jr. comes back, don't sleep on that man. Also having a really great season when he's actually on the floor this year. But yeah, Moritz has come through in a big way, and if he's going to be getting the 29 to 30 minutes that he's been getting in the month of December without Wendell Carter Jr. on the floor, I mean, there was a moment in time where it could have been him or it could have been Mo Bamba getting that starting role and getting those 30 minutes, and it went to Moritz after he's been hitting the 3-pointers that he's been hitting, roughly 1.5 made a game on like 3.5 attempts. So being super efficient, had a monster dunk the other day as well. I swear to God, after he drove from the 3-point line on that Atlanta team, which was wonderful. We know they don't play any defense. So I really wanted to go Orlando. It's like finally they have a tiny little spread where they're favored against one of the 2-3 worst teams in the league, but they're just not good as a favorite, and it scares me. So I stayed away from them tonight. We'll see how for real they are in a game where they're on the road as a favorite. I think this is a huge test for them, and Moritz is going to be getting those 30 minutes, and I think there's going to be some points to be had for sure on the road with Orlando. So nice pick there with Moritz. A guy I don't want to go under with because I do love Gordo Hayward, but I got to. Mr. Hayward there on the Hornets. Coming back, nice little win for them against the Kangs a couple nights ago. Kangs didn't really bring it, I'll be honest, but LaMelo has resurged this team in a way that I was scared to go under for him. It's a tough matchup for sure for Charlotte tonight, as they are, what's their under? They're at 8-point underdogs right now against the Clips, but it's just a tough matchup for them. And the Clippers team that's been playing great defense all season and definitely as of late as well. This is the third game in 4 nights for Gordo, so I'm going under his 15.5 points. I would also go under on his 24.5 PRA. The points are a little bit obviously ballsier there. Minus 102 for under 16 tonight for him. Minus 113 on FanDuel for him to get under 25 points, rebounds, and assists combined. So, in the 3 since he's returned from injury, where he's been consistently the last 2 years, 14 a game, 6 boards, 3 assists. That still gets you just under the PRA and definitely under the points there. In his last 2 versus the Clippers, yeah, he's had a few better, some decent games, 16 points, 7.5 boards, and 2 assists in those games. But, you look at his field goal percentage at about 38.5%. And neither of those games were really close either. Some pretty big blowouts where it's just kind of like, all right, they weren't really anything to take seriously. But like I was saying, that Clippers lights out defense, especially with PG and Kawhi when they're in their 95.5 defensive rating over the last 3 with those 2 guys playing. They've had a nice little break, and they're also, and just in terms of limiting, this is really why I prefer going under on Gordon Hayward, besides the fact that LaMelo's back with a vengeance right now. I don't want to go under on him. Do want to go under on a guy where, against small forwards, LAC, the Clippers are limiting their opposing small forwards third in terms of their 3-point percentage, their the free throw attempts a game, limiting their assists. So yeah, they're limiting everything everywhere all over the floor right now, especially against those small forwards. And it's just a game that's probably not going to have enough points for Gordon to be able to get to those 16.
Yeah, he's only gotten to 20 points once in his last 6 meetings with the Clippers, and it took 48 minutes to get there, and he shot like 29% from the floor. I just don't see him having a huge usage rate here when it's the third game in 4 nights. I don't understand why they played him 39 minutes on the second half of a back-to-back. It's like, are you trying to get him injured again so that you can shut him down for the season? Because, nobody's going to bother you if you just shut him down anyway. We know you're tanking, Charlotte. So, they don't have much of a chance here tonight. I'd be interested in teasing the Clippers down to 4 or 5 with another game if you like it, because I think with the good rest here, they've just been lights out. They basically threw a game on a back-to-back, but otherwise they're back to playing excellent defense, and they should have both their guys out here tonight.
Yeah, and if both of their guys are out there, yeah, it's going to be clamps time for Gordon Hayward with such limited options for Charlotte as well. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Taking a small little break here as we have a really small slate tomorrow night, and not much going on Friday for us, but we do have everything going for you guys for the Xmas Day games this Sunday. So until we see you next, happy betting.